there, and he's going to tell a little bit about his history as well, so I'll let him tell a little bit more about that. Before he came here to Tryon Arts and Crafts School, he was at the Bascom in Highlands, and, or Cashers? Highlands. And served there for many years, and I've been on the board with Tryon Arts and Crafts School for about 3 years now, and saw peripherally how they did the hiring process, and Will definitely was the great choice for the job, and he's done a really great job at Tryon Arts and Crafts. And if you haven't been there, it's not very far. So if you haven't, I'll have you go over there as soon as you can, and maybe sign up for a class or go to the annual meeting that will be at Tryon Arts and Crafts on the 28th. Is that correct? From 5 to 8. 6 to 8 p.m. So January 28th, 6 to 8 p.m. just across the street. So I hope y'all can make it over there. And I'll let Will speak.
Is this thing on?
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Well, it's great to be here. It's taken me 1.5 years to make it, a couple hundred feet, but it's well worth the commute. And I greatly respect Rotary, and I'm glad you finally wore me down and got me over here. See many faces in the crowd of folks that I do know, many of whom I know either socially or through the school, and I see many other faces that are less familiar. So my intention today is to present a little bit of information about who I am as a way of showing my path to Tryon, and then to give you an overview of the school, essentially on the ground level. What's happening, what's been happening, what have we accomplished, what are we working on, and that is that. So our school is a nonprofit. It's an arts and crafts school, much the lineage of schools such as John C. Campbell Folk Arts School, which is in Brasstown, Penland School of Craft, which is in Spruce Pine, Arrowmont School of Craft, which is in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and many others who have been around about as long as we have, if not a bit longer. However, I like to think the Tryon Arts and Crafts School has been around for 1.5 years. Because there's a lot that we're changing. There's a paradigm that we are trying to shift. So our service is to Polk County, to Landrum, and the extended community. Our mission incorporates not only heritage practices, but contemporary practices in arts and crafts. And in order to fulfill our will for art education, we provide classes that are weekly, maybe 6 weeks long, a few hours a week, some during the daytime, some in the evening. We provide one-time workshops, which often are with a visiting hotshot artist from throughout the region or beyond. Through gallery exhibitions, which are more of an art appreciation opportunity. And we also have a heritage collection, which is over 200 objects of historical relevance to Tryon and Polk County and a little bit further, such as Tryon toys, hand-carved toys, pottery, handcrafted tools, spinning wheels, in the past 150 or so years. What we're working on doing right now, historically, arts and crafts has been very geared toward adult continuing education. We certainly intend to sustain that and cherish those who are stakeholders and participants in our classes. What we're trying to do, however, is open that envelope to a multi-generational experience, which could be pre-K through older adults. We've had an art camp for many years, but what we're trying to do is provide learning experiences for preschool, elementary, after school, middle and high schoolers, so that people will not just be able to say, I have been a part of Tryon Arts and Crafts School for 10 years, 20 years. We want people eventually to be able to say, I've been part of Tryon Arts and Crafts School for 70 years. It's the first place I took an art class. It's the first exhibition I ever saw. So, who are we? In addition to a volunteer board of directors, there are 2 part-time staff. Diana Jackson, who has a background in finance and secretarial roles at law firms. She's been with us 14 years. And our new addition is Elena Carnahan. She has a background in visual arts, visual art nonprofits, and nonprofit marketing. So put that all in a blender. She is our marketing and programs coordinator. And then we have me. This is a shot from me on void work. What I'd like to do is tell you a little bit now about my story, how I got here. And I think there are a lot of people that I pretty much have not shown my art since I've been here, and so most people don't believe that I'm an artist, so I intend to debunk that today with you, however briefly. So these are paintings of mine. I got my undergraduate, I'm originally from Birmingham, Alabama. I got my undergraduate degree at Lewis and Clark College in music composition as well as in studio art and painting. At the time I had previously been studying abroad and in Savannah, essentially pre-architecture. I was interested in becoming an architect. I studied through Syracuse University in Florence, came back thinking I was going to be an architect, and immediately fell in love with painting. And you could perhaps see a correlation between the 2 interests. This is a ceiling painting in Portland, Oregon. It's about 15 feet by 18 feet. After Portland, I went back to Birmingham, got to know my 4-year-old niece for a year, and worked as a painter on commission while applying for graduate and post-baccalaureate programs around the country in visual arts. I ended up in San Francisco at the San Francisco Art Institute in 2005. Got my post-baccalaureate in painting there. My body of work shifted significantly to more abstract work. And while I was there, I also developed my other passions, such as cooking and photography, which sometimes were married into one. I also dabbled throughout my Masters of Fine Art in performance. And performance art, as I define it, is different than performing arts. I wasn't dancing, I wasn't playing music in that regard. I was going into the public, activating people, using social interactions as my medium. Sometimes as an interventionist, sometimes as an explorer, but engaging the public, seeing how they react. As you see here, this body of work was the Institution of Youth, where I carried around a large balloon, which in and of itself is somewhat sculptural with its presence. But it was part of a larger body of work whereby I was studying youth in terms, so that's a personal history youth. I was studying it in terms of museums, collective history, how do we document and represent our collective past through artifacts, through exhibitions, through written accounts. So this is just one component of that body of work. One more performance, please. So, having spent the better part of 10 years in the Pacific Northwest, I finished in 2008 my Master's of Fine Art, which I highly recommend as a degree to get at the onset of a recession. It's very lots of application in the real world. So I was very humbled in the next few years. I wore many hats, which I wouldn't trade for all the experience that I had working as a preparator in galleries, working as an art advisor for an art repository for works on paper, working as the co-director of the Diego Rivera Gallery at the San Francisco Art Institute, and as a production assistant for a science and math education software developer. Lots of different hats, but it all adds up, in my mind, to a more nuanced perspective on how the art world works. But I was a little bit tired and a little bit impatient, so I decided to look around, go back to school, pursue an education in education. I ended up in Western North Carolina. I enrolled at Western Carolina University for an MA program in teaching comprehensive education in visual arts. And about one semester in, I got a job at the Bascom Arts Center, which is in Highlands. You may be wondering, why would Will live in Birmingham, Portland, San Francisco, and then Cashers? Reason being, for about 25 years, my family's had a cabin up a mountain in Cashers, near Panthertown National Park. And when it occurred to me that I could go back to school in proximity to that cabin, I couldn't think about anything else. So moving from a metropolis to a very small area was actually quite enticing a prospect to me. And so that's what I did. And as one might assume, my artistic practice branched into other areas. Here we see a few ceramic works that I did. I became, to my satisfaction, accomplished, and then I met my wife, who is a full-time potter, and all my sense of accomplishment vanished. So I defer to her for the pottery in the family now. I also continued working in an abstract form, carrying what I had done with my paintings in the abstract, what I'd done with architectural paintings, and my appreciation of photography into one bundle. So some very architectural, abstract photograph collages. Then I needed to climb my ladder. I had loved it at the Bascom. I worked as their education director for 3 or so years as their education director, and then we founded a new department, the Department of Community Outreach. Over 6.5 years, we grew our community outreach programs from 10 community partnerships to 40. And let that resonate in your minds, because that is very much in keeping with my vision for Tryon Arts and Crafts School. It's a vision of collaboration. It's a vision where nonprofits, schools, churches, social service agencies work together to lift the community up. They do not compete, they share resources, and the community is better off for it. Do you think it'll work?
Yes.
So I was delighted to arrive at the school. At the Bascom, I'd only had a ceramic studio and sort of a hodgepodge multimedia adult studio and a youth studio. When I arrived at Tryon Arts and Crafts School, suddenly we had a whole world, a repurposed middle and high school, not only the cafeteria with clear story lighting, repurposed as a gallery, but also the old classrooms had been converted into essentially these disciplines. Clay studio is equipped to make both functional and ceramic art. We have potter's wheels. If you want to do hand building, we have slab rollers. We have an extruder. We have kilns. The fiber studio has added significance to it, but I call it our foundational studio because it was the bequest of the late Jeanette White that her estate be given to Tryon Arts and Crafts, which is what paid for us to own the 1.6 acres that you see across the street there. Multimedia studio facilitates lapidary and stone polishing. It facilitates stained glass, fused glass. Our forge has 5 forges, an instructor forge and 4 student forges. We have axe and tomahawk classes. We have knife making classes. We have blacksmithing classes where you can hear, on the far left you see the makings of a mounted hooked rack for your coats.
Corkscrew.
Yes, we have one of our teachers who makes corkscrews that then are commissioned by Ray McLeese.
wine and nuts.
We have a silversmithing studio that's equipped with multiple flex shaft stations for detail work. That's essentially a rotary tool. Polishing, setting stones, molds, and casting. Oh, and by the way, that's a married couple who made their wedding bands for one another in our studio.
Neat.
Our wood studio has many options. We have lathes for wood turning. We have saws, dusters. Maybe I should let Jim Melberg tell us what all we have. It's a well-equipped studio, and we're looking for some remodeling and new equipment in the coming year. And out of these studios, not only do we have these ongoing opportunities where students learn sequentially over 6 weeks, for example. Not only do we have occasional fun weekend workshops where you sip on a glass of wine and hang out with your friends and make art, or just sip on a glass of wine and watch your friends make art. But we have Saturday morning coffee and crafts. Those are fun, user-friendly, even non-artists or art appreciators have a great time. What we're also doing is bringing in talent from the region, extremely talented artists doing work perhaps unlike what some of the artists in our area are doing. And the goal is for our students and community members to participate, to supplement their practice with new ideas. Because one of the great things about art is instructors can share all of their tricks, and students can try to replicate it, and inevitably they'll transfer that knowledge into something they are compelled to do. There is no exact replication. Until we get a printmaking studio and a photography studio, then there's more replication then. Youth art, as I mentioned before, for 15 or maybe even 20 years we've had this Summer Sizzler program, but now we're expanding on this youth art camp throughout the entire year. We've just introduced elementary after school with Clara Rogers. Some of you may recognize her as the local public school elementary teacher for 30 or so years. Well, she retired, and then she came to us and said, I don't think I should have retired. Can I teach here? And we said, we would love to have you. So, those are essentially, that is an overview of many of our tuition-based paid programs. But how are we bringing the community in less intimidating ways, in ways where we're also collaborating, and in ways where perhaps we could identify students who have been under a rock but are interested in being engaged? Well, with the help of the Polk County Community Foundation, and I know many other nonprofits in the area have benefited from similar funding, we now have free classes for locals. We've been offering these for since 2018, July, I think, or August. And what we have found is that students are coming out of the woodwork. So they have been paying attention, but they needed more, a sense that the door was open for them with money off the table, not an issue. And so here is just a few examples. This is a fused glass class, first day. There's a weaving class, of course. Silversmithing, ring setting. And now what we are piloting this year, I'm very happy to say, at the end of 2019 and going into 2020, we were given funding to pilot new youth programs. So we, in this case, are just appreciative to be invited to participate with the grant that the public schools have been given from the Polk County Community Foundation to have an after-school program. So we are, for perhaps 8 weeks at a time, sending an instructor over after school to the schools. Tryon Elementary, Polk Central, Saluda, and Sunnyview each get a week. This past fall we offered fused glass, and we have instructors from Greenville who have this kind of on-the-road suitcase program. It's just ready to go. They know exactly what they're doing, and we're very fortunate to have instructors of that quality. We have also in the fall piloted a 12-week-long middle and high school free program in blacksmithing, fused glass, and pottery, 4 weeks in each. And intergenerational art as well. We are very big on intergenerational opportunities. The foundation is very big on intergenerational opportunities, form those multi-generational bonds. Now, to something a little coarser, a little raw, a little more raw sensibility, digging into the earth, building things. So what we have done since I've been here, and some of this was inherited, are a few capital projects. I just want to make sure the community is aware of this. It's making a huge difference to us, to our sustainability, to our capacity. Firstly, there was a roof replacement that was beyond necessary. When I arrived, we had leaks. We had just essentially a mess, but work was being done to remedy that. And I never thought I would hear the words come out of my mouth, "What a beautiful roof." But they did. And the Polk County Community Foundation completely funded this emergency roof repair. There we are, pretty much blinded. It is so bright, I'm telling you. Now, the end of 2018 and the beginning of 2019, and many other nonprofits in the area have benefited from this as well. We had a complete LED energy efficiency lighting upgrade for all 10,000 square feet of our main building. And it's rather bright. I've told the students at this point, if they hurt themselves, it's user error. No excuses when it's that bright in there. And what we have been working on through mid-year of 2019 and have recently completed, I'm happy to say, are some interior remodeling, essentially musical chairs with a lot of what we already had, trying to spruce the place up, work on the flow of the visitor when they come to the school, and get rid of the eyesores. Dust the shelves, wipe off the cobwebs. So here I'm pointing out the former system, which had our heritage collection essentially playing the role of a wall that blocks the natural light in. The shop is on the other side of this wall, the gallery is on this side. What we've done is we've moved that. So now we have much more natural light coming in. It's a much airier, lighter feel. And you can understand the great size of the space. The heritage collection has been moved. We moved lockers out of the back area, which was essentially a cave where we stored things previously. Now we're maximizing the real estate that we have, converting this into this. Another before and another after. Our exhibition space, you can now see it expands further. The sense that this expands all the way to these beautiful windows over here through the shop. People want to enter the retail shop, whereas once they, the first day after we had moved the Heritage Collection, one of our students said, "I was never sure if I was allowed to go into the shop." It's the shop. There must be shopping in it. Some more recent exhibitions that also show that the light quality, the airiness, the open space. Now, moving on, a studio I did not mention when I previously was covering studios is the Shane Urquhart Metals and Glass Studio. That is because this project has just been completed. There was a student named Shane Urquhart, 42 years old, extremely talented woodworker, steel worker, who unfortunately succumbed to cancer. And his parents recognized how much the school at Tryon Arts and Crafts had become an important place to Shane in his later years. He was embraced by many of the knife makers and the blacksmiths, and really took to it in his late years, and they got together and created the initiative of the Shane Urquhart Metals and Glass Studio. This photo is significant to me because when I first came for my site visit, this is what I saw: a concrete slab. And one of our stakeholders greeted me, walked me around, toured me, spoke about the studio project, this capital initiative that I just assumed was being contracted out and funds raised. Well, I was wrong about the contracting aspect primarily. What I was told at that time as we were walking on the dried slab was that this all was conceived by volunteers, the architectural designs donated by volunteers, the plans rendered and executed by volunteers, the studio would be built by volunteers, funds raised through and by volunteers, with maybe a small contractor or two, but essentially this was a volunteer initiative, and my mind was blown. These are all of the businesses and individuals who have contributed to the Shane Urquhart Metals and Glass Studio. And I present to you the Shane Urquhart Metals and Glass Studio, which is equipped for MIG, TIG, and stick welding. It has torches for both welding and for glass work, lamp work, beads. It opens up potential for a variety of new processes and a variety of new products. These are some examples of beadwork. Perhaps you could come and make some yard art. Some nice beaded torch rendered earrings and pendants. Also the welding, the metal welding component. Just some examples. Joe Cooper's work is on the left and the right, but these are, you could potentially be making a copper textured bronze candle holder, or cup holder if you will. Perhaps a lamp, it's steel that's been welded together, or just a two-dimensional artwork. We have new signage that you please look for. It's out on Harmon Field, right behind the Forge and Shane Urquhart Metals and Glass Studio. You'll see on the back, on this image on the right, there is some history of how the project was conceived, even some history about the Forge, which was built as a, with our volunteers to help an Eagle Scout get his badge, and about our commitment over the years to celebrating opportunities for youth to be creative. Now, much less colorful, which is why I put a very colorful image. What you're not seeing when you come to Tryon Arts and Crafts School, but what's happening, the backstage pass. There's a lot that we've been working on to make this a better school, not just on the surface, not just a manicured school, but a school that has standards. And so we've been drafting a variety of policies that ensure safety for our students. Safety has to be first. Standards for our instruction and curriculum content, and importantly for instructor and student conduct. Our stakeholders, be them instructors, be them students need to know what our expectations are for how they will behave themselves, how they will proceed into our studios with safe practices, and essentially be a part of a communal creative environment. Part of this also is a digitization of some of these products and processes. We now have an online application process for our instructors who maybe are not local. We now have all of our forms and signed agreements online, so to make things easier for those who are digitally inclined. Of course, we always have everything printed in the offices here. In addition to that, we've raised our exhibition standards. We're now using what we call museum standard exhibitions, which are intended to be a cleaner presentation, more, in my opinion, an acknowledgement of the work having been done by the artist. The work is done. The gallery's job is to better create a situation where an audience can come into the gallery and best, most optimally view and experience the artwork without competing with the artist. We've streamlined our recruitment processes for instructors, gallery, and shop. I just mentioned our online application process. We're also going out into the region, having studio visits with artists, talking about how they could be a part of a dynamic exhibition as a featured artist, as a jurist, as a shop artist. And new system upgrades. I struggled to find an image for this. I thought y'all didn't need to see my messy desk, so I just took a picture of this computer, which is among a few things that the Polk County Community Foundation funded in our time of need. And with technology moving as fast as it is these days, times of needs come on a pretty short cycle. This day you buy a new computer, that day it's obsolete. So they stepped in to help us out. Okay, so here we are. Did I mention it's our 60th anniversary this year? I think I did. Our Diamond Jubilee. So I have presented on the table an events list. So all of this is supplement to the many educational course offerings, workshops, classes. This is a little more glitz and glamour. We're trying to pull all the stops. So please look through that. Put it on your refrigerator, whatever the case may be. I'll point out a couple items on there. There's the Fuse Fest, which is February 15th and 16th. We're bringing in 3 world-class fused glass instructors. They will be teaching a symposium over the weekend, and we're already generating interest both with locals, and we're also importing a variety of students who may not otherwise have found Tryon. So we hope that there's an appreciation and engagement of our hotels and businesses as a result of this. And then multiple exhibitions throughout the year. The Shane Urquhart Metals and Glass Studio unveiling will be April 3rd. That's a Friday from 4 to 6. Please come, please tell your friends. And a new program as well is June 20th, our Family Day. So that'll be a free day of art and demonstrations and hopefully collaboration with some community partners. And that is essentially all I got.